to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So if we're all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.
Hi everybody, welcome World Blockchain Roundtable episode 22. This week we're actually going over blockchain for marketplaces. So hosts for today, Greg from Rivet, Dave from Din.social, Sean, creator and entrepreneur, and I'm Joe, architect of Dragonchain. Quick update from last week. Each host will get 266 lot. Each topic contributor will get 55 lot. And by the way, those will start going up faster as soon as the matter tipping, lot tipping stuff is all in place. Hopefully next week, we'll see, because we'll be able to do it immediately after the week is over. So, okay. Theme this week is blockchain for marketplaces. So let's go straight into it. Refresh.
Good morning, Joe. It's morning your time, right?
Yes, it's 8 o'clock.
It's lunchtime for me.
Really? That's 11. Yeah, right. Early lunch.
It's around second breakfast for me.
Right on. Sean's Midwest too, right? Or not Midwest, but middle.
Middle, yeah, central.
The best time zone, by the way.
So it's
okay.
early, but not. It's really early for me.
Yes.
Not for normal people.
I know when I first moved to Eastern time zone, that the people had never talked to them about. It's like, oh yeah, when the ball drops. Back in the day when you would watch the ball drop in New York on New Year's Eve, how weird it was that the rest of the country had to, watch that and then wait for their own. It's kind of funny. Anyway,
I thought that was weird when I moved
especially weird.
From Central. I thought that was really strange because it's like it's such a huge thing. It's the end of the year. It's this, massive thing. When I was a kid, especially we would go into the city, so it was one of the biggest things of my life as a child. And then to watch it, and we're all sitting here with our champagne and everything, just not doing anything, waiting. It was odd.
One of the weirdest things about that, just to digress this from past, I missed everybody, so I'm going to digress this a lot to express my love for all. The way that the U.S. code is written around time zones says you can keep daylight savings time as part of your time cycle, or you can always stay in standard time, but you cannot switch permanently to savings time.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So
I was fighting with that yesterday, trying to do math on daylight savings time, and
we need to convert everything to daylight savings. And if we do switch, it needs to switch forward. When you move forward, it should skip Monday by one, and plus 1 hour. Skip Monday plus 1 hour, and when you flow back, it should anyway.
I didn't realize that Europe and the U.S. have different daylight savings time switches. There's like a 2-week overlap.
Right.
Where we're -5, in Eastern Standard, but then when there's a 2-week gap where daylight savings time is if there's a 2-hour difference instead of a 1 hour difference. And my whole time in the military, I never had separate clocks on my wall, but I'm ordering separate clocks now just because of freaking NFT drops. Because I'm trying to figure out what's the real time that I can actually get this NFT. I have no idea because it's just confusing me.
Well, okay, so that law is a federal law.
Off topic as hell, but yeah.
The states get to choose this deal, and sometimes the states devolve it to the locals.
I don't know.
If you got tribal systems in play, then they have their own
marketplaces. You brought daylight savings time into marketplaces, which is what we're talking about. So it's really not off topic.
It's on topic. Yeah, because people do.
You can totally vote.
If you ever go to
in the middle of a time zone that has the ball drop, you could hypothetically set up a microstate in sight of the ball drop, and if it were recognized as a governmental entity in New York that could choose its own time zone rules with respect to the federal law, you could create a situation for yourself where you're in the wrong time zone for the ball drop to be accurate.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of wrong time zones, real quick, is there's a city called Columbus, Georgia, and it's a university town, great place. My wife and I go like just kind of for the weekend sometimes to get away. But right across the river is a different time zone. But if you're from out of town and you go right across the river, you would assume that your phone is correct. It changes you to the new time zone, yada yada. Well, no, they don't use the actual time zone because they all work across in Columbus. They don't work in Louisiana or wherever it is.
Georgia.
Right.
Yeah, but it's interesting because people just choose not to use the right time.
Indianapolis is another weird one.
There's a marketplace opportunity for that.
You can be in Central Time right up to the edge of Indianapolis, and then all of a sudden you're in Eastern.
There's our 10-minute start.
There you go. Ground. Okay, so first up, Y'all Weird, who, by the way, wrote that the music that was playing on the original commercial, amazing stuff.
True story.
If you wanted to do it, it's awesome. So thanks, Y'all Weird. And first question: when you say marketplace in the context of blockchain, what does that mean? So who wants to start?
I guess I will. Okay, yeah. I was going to say this is something that I've actually only begun understanding more and more since I started working with Den Social, the concept of a marketplace, because that's what we are. We're a marketplace for ideas and content and evaluation, and it's almost like a version of a jobs marketplace. You know, here's the structure in the economy. Go do whatever you want to do to make that, to earn that matter, and it ends up being like a really good engine. It's like it's an optimized engine for like not having to, you know, the example I've given before about putting a machine in town square and letting people operate it, and then like, you know, it's another analogy is like this blockchain thing with the marketplace. Instead of having a business with employees inside of it, you can turn it inside out, and then have all of your employees and seats are on the outside, and anybody can walk up and just use the system. It makes it a trustless marketplace where you couldn't really have that before. So I think specific to blockchain, that's what I see in it. That's what I see.
To me, well, I think, yeah, and that's a good one. And it's not wrong because, you know, I would say that it's not wrong because of my own definition of marketplaces, which, you know, and I'm going to try this analogy, but I'm sort of pulling it out of my, if I were wearing my hat right now. It's like a functional definition of a thing, right? That you either pass it the context necessary to define when you call it, or you don't. And if you don't, it defaults to whatever priors you had. You know, so you're going to say the word marketplace, and it's either going to be contextualized by you at that point, or not, and people are just going to have to imply what you mean. But essentially, it's some space where people exchange freely, right? And that space is defined by what you think of as fair game for free exchange.
It also
either
kind of
lets things around you because of who you are.
It also lets you kind of crowdsource what's good, you know, like get a bunch of brains behind it in an
Right.
economy fashion.
Well, I can say the concept of a marketplace and how a blockchain can either help or make that marketplace transparent or measurable was one of the founding principles of Dragonchain. That at Disney, we came up with this slogan that was anything is tokenizable, but everything's a marketplace. And the point was that in some of the experiments that we did, which, you know, they were experiments. For us, they were, you know, we were seeking out use cases or potential needs inside Disney, and we did that a bunch of different ways that were really successful. And to throw what we built up against the rocks. Is it scalable? Does it break? Are there things we forgot about? Is there stuff that we didn't recognize would be obviously needed as a common thing, feature? And it was amazing. The amount of feedback we got was amazing. But some of the projects we started solely as a way between, like, the one I usually describe is between engineering groups where they needed transparency. They had no idea what was coming down to them, you know, from their customers inside the company, and they wanted transparency. because they were constantly getting bad deliveries. They were constantly getting incomplete deliveries, broken deliveries, things like this. And so we were able to get foot in the door that way. And right off the bat, when I started looking at it, I was telling them, I think you're going to need a currency. And that of course scared them, right? And that was kind of one of those things that I learned over time. Don't say it that way. But once they kind of saw the system design, and once they started to understand how it was working, they said, I think I get it, but we have these questions. How do we handle if somebody doesn't have the currency to come and do something that we are obliged to do? And that was a pretty simple thing, because it's like, well, then you run a negative balance and you charge them interest for it, or you at least have the measurable report, something that is, here is what this team is doing. So you can take it up the chain and say, that team's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we can't continue to support it, right? That type of thing. And what it amounted to, though, was we took what was absolutely a political economy between those groups, where it was who knows who, oh, I know your boss. Oh, I know your boss's boss, right? Oh, I play golf with somebody. And who asks what favors because of who they know, right? And so you end up with a ton of people leaving, because it's not, it's political economies are horrible to work at,
Well, and a right of exit is part of something that you can't really stop. People can't be kept in a market because because you say so, right? They can always choose to exit. So what you say that drives people away from your market defines another market space.
Yep.
And I like the word market spaces better than I like the word marketplaces. But
it's a weird thing, though, because across the board, like say, I think of everything that we've done has been modeled that way. I think of Den as a content marketplace. It literally is a marketplace around providing content, right? And then evaluate the rewards are based upon the eval. The eval is based around a prediction market, and Factor, which is not in full fruition yet. The vision entirely there is a marketplace of identity, where if I met you and you didn't know me, I could show you a couple of things that would allow you to do business with me to prove, legally. But then I would also be able to show you things that, if I'm not standing in front of you, would let you at least assess the likelihood of whether I'm a real human being individual, and not a bot, number one, but also not a secondary or impersonation or something, because you can actually measure the network. So there's a bunch of really neat stuff you can do, and frankly, it ends up being it's kind of the driver for, and sometimes it's not a free market, right? Ideally they are, but if it's a driver for, and with blockchain, a non-free or a market that, even clubs, there are social marketplaces constantly in life. Your friend groups.
Well, you can't stop it from being a free market, honestly. I would go out and say there's no such thing as not a free market. There are people who define markets in the context of their limits that they can conceive of them in. But if you do that, if I say you can't leave my marketplace, and my marketplace doesn't permit you to sell that or buy that freely, whatever that may be, okay, guys, you may not have this used vape. Nobody can have this. There's no such thing as out there as somebody who can buy this from me. I dare someone to prove me wrong. I just created a market space that somebody can try to prove me wrong by making me an offer for that. But if I were really doing that, not tongue in cheek, I would be breaking a federal law just by creating that marketplace. Because I can't even sell this thing because it has residue of nicotine in it without carding you. So did that marketplace exist? Is it still free? Yeah. It just it gets a descriptor from people who don't like the idea that they can't shut it down of a color now. Right? Did I just create a gray market or a black market, or what did I create? I don't know. But the fact that you have to No, the fact that you have to resist it means that you give proof to its existence. Like nobody resists the community of all the other people that bought tickets for the Greyhound bus you're riding. It doesn't make any sense. There's no community there to resist.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sometimes there are no choices. Sometimes you don't have a choice for a better market. But the great thing about blockchain and marketplaces is that it can increase transparency. So you can make people aware of a marketplace that they would have just thought of, oh, that's life, that's game, that's it's a game. I have to play the game to get ahead at work, whatever. That you could open that up so that it's not seen that way. Instead, it's seen as, and for the business, the reason that it matters is it can be a meritocracy. You can actually measure and reward people based upon their actual activity, right? That's what's key. And then the other side of it is you can use things like information markets, prediction markets inside of those marketplaces or economies or market spaces, whatever you want to call it, to better signal anybody who and in the case of Den, it is to better signal which content do we want to put at the top of the hot content, right? So it's stuff like that's very interesting because you could apply it so many ways.
Well, there's been marketplaces since the beginning of time, and those marketplaces have been radically different. Wherever you're at, something that could be of like precious, massive value in one place could not have anything to do with another. Like water, in the Middle East would have some super high value, whereas in the other part of the world, it's everywhere. Nobody cares about it. It's worthless.
Right.
But with
it's marginal utility that you're getting into there.
With the internet, that kind of brought all these people together so that those niche marketplaces could exist much more, because it could be with interests. A very small amount of people have an interest in this tiny thing, but they could come together and form Mt. Gox. When Bitcoin was tiny, so that marketplace was created. The thing I think that blockchain brings to all those marketplaces, just what Joe said, transparency and immutability. That's the main thing.
Someone was talking about drivers being a driving force, and I've seen that with blockchain with the relative trustlessness, where you have a little bit of separation of who you're trusting versus who you're dealing with in a marketplace. That makes people, at least in my case, more willing to participate in just debate and stuff when there's something tangible to point to that everybody, no matter what their opinion, can point to. Data or a timestamp or some relative trustlessness of the marketplace that you're operating or communicating on. People with opposing ideas seem to be more interested in coexisting on that framework than one that they perceive as just, centralized and controlled by one, leaning opinion or something, or one driving profit only entity or whatever.
Well, and when you think about it, that's just, the trust state of a market is just a signal from that market, which is another interesting concept about marketplaces. What's a market signal? What do you count as a thing that gives you meaningful information about a market, right? Where is it stored? Is it stored in the people that are interacting in it? Is it in the tools you use? Is it tacit knowledge that's just loaded up in the priors of the fact that you're in front of a screen with something like a touch interface or a mouse and a keyboard, and so you type things and those send signals to the market that we don't think about because the knowledge to use them, or the knowledge to understand why they're useful, is stored in the tools themselves. You don't think, I need some way to say something to people. You just start typing. That's in the tool. So there's a lot of priors loaded into markets, these assumptions that we make that are stored. I don't know if anybody here has read anything from Phil Salen before, or read about Phil Salen. Interesting cat. And I don't want to flog him too much, but I think philsalen.com has his really neat treatise called The Wealth of Kitchens. And it's like the idea of, what if the wealth of nations hadn't been where we started? What if we started with an individual actor that needs to do something, and built a sort of a model of human action from that level up, as opposed to starting with, let there be light, the world was made, and America joins the WTO type of markets.
Yeah.
And instead you got down to the little individual things that make markets possible, which is people interacting with it.
Yeah.
And each other.
Yeah. Yeah, because centralization was a big thing. I know early internet, and this is not purely, but it is. This is what I would consider the broader marketplace. Before it was very measurable. I mean, the best measure you could get in the old days was how many visits you got, and all the analytics around visits to your website. I'm talking early 90s, right? And yet, as a band in the Midwest, in the middle of nowhere international, we weren't on either the coasts or anything else. We actually got a lot of exposure because I was a nerd. So we had a decent website where none of the big bands had, their websites would be an album cover, right? That's all it would be. They didn't know what to do with the internet, right? So, we would put show times up, we would have merch up, we would have contests and all type of stuff, right? And we would end up getting framed along with all the major label acts. And we got a lot of exposure in the Far East, and a lot of exposure in the newly collapsed behind the Iron Curtain, right? That they loved it, right? And
wait, Joe, did you ever see Electric Eel Shock play live?
No.
Okay, for some reason they sounded like they might be right up your alley.
Yeah. So you guys had just a better tool set that you knew how to use. You had better tools.
We hacked some stuff. It was, not in terms of attacking stuff, but we hacked the system a few times to do crazy
like a life hack
locally, and things that we knew would work, and it was crazy because it was so early on the internet. But I had always thought, okay, this is going to be amazing because this is before MP3s existed. So our main problem was distribution, right? It was one of those things that still surprised me to this day, that once you had the ability to digitally distribute your material, why did record labels continue to exist unless they were totally flipped and actually useful to the artist? And yet they did.
Right.
And yet all of that decentralization was then refined to Facebook, Twitter, Google, and the rest of them, right? So it's just like, what in the world happened that everybody?
Well, that really is the internet to a lot of
people. This topic is too big. I just thought another thing about market.
People make fun of AOL. It's the same thing. It's like Facebook is the equivalent to AOL. I mean, they don't send you discs in the mail, right? But that's pretty much it.
No.
So,
but discs in the mail is how most people started getting that was the bridgehead.
Those were exciting. Those were effective.
They used the old network to start the new one, right?
Discs
you get
everywhere.
AOL disc, and it was like, I wonder if I can run this on 386 using Windows 3.1, and the answer is maybe, if you know how to load a boot disk. But
how funny is it that we're talking about AOL discs? So they used the medium of exchange and killed it. And it's like they used the mail system to kill the mail system.
Oh yeah,
right.
They brought email to everybody.
Yep.
Or maybe the way to think about it is, they used the existing network's capabilities to expand its capabilities. What if the mail system was simply this really kind of pain in the butt thing to use? I mean, people used to complain before the internet that nobody sends personal letters anymore, right? Like, it was a gripe that made them do things like have units on that in first grade. We're going to give you a pen pal now, and you're going to write a letter because nobody uses the mail like they're supposed to, says the older generation.
Yeah,
we did that, but they taught us to write letters to companies begging for free product, and it worked.
It does work, actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, well,
that's
it also
actually a neat
cheapened
thing about
that
networks.
because I think companies looked at, hey, we got 50 letters, so there's 87 billion people that don't have the time to write the letters. So these 50 letters represent
Oh, yeah.
150,000 of our consumers. Whereas now everyone
Right.
can send an email; it's not a big deal. Also,
Yeah.
they killed the postcard industry.
Right.
So
Oh no! I mean, they sent a postcard that you could read in your computer that killed the postcard. It's amazing, but just like JP12 is saying in the comments right now, bootstrapping the internet via SNML. Yes, exactly. And right now we are, to anybody who's not writing this on den.social, getting free things sent to us every time somebody enters a Unicode character that represents one of their ideas. You're not being rewarded for that typically on the internet. And it's like one of the biggest things that markets can do is incentivize people by rewarding value they're already providing.
This is true.
Something else. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
That was like that was such a huge thing for me. Is everything with music for my whole life had been very, very mechanical, very analog. Even if you were going to steal it, you'd have to, take your one boom box and put it in front of your other boom box and get your tape that your buddy, had. And then, it's like, don't go in the room, man, I'm recording that. And it was difficult, or you had to leave your house and go buy music at the store. And to be able to just like tap with your finger 2 or 3 times and then have the music, that was so weird. And be able to make like a mix tape but put it on CD, that was weird. That was like totally.
And on top of that, distributing software to write your own, to make your own music in a similar way. I remember my older stepbrother, his biggest problem was the trackball and the mouse, because he didn't have the hardware, but he had Fruity Loops and he could fade on a fader with the mouse, but the trackball would stick. So you'd be listening to it, it wouldn't be a smooth like transition, that kind of thing. But yeah, that was the heyday of like, wow, access to anything you kind of want. It was still as exciting, but that was when the internet was, there was a huge internet out there. And now it really is. Facebook goes down and people are calling customer service to their ISP to figure out why their internet doesn't work because Facebook's down.
Right.
Yep. And by the way, I did have to look it up. Is Andrew Tannenbaum in 1981? Don't ever estimate the bandwidth capacity of a station wagon. Right? You could put at any point in time a tremendous amount of data in a station wagon and drive it across the country. And you could probably get it faster there than at the time it would have been sent over digital means.
Right.
So
I've done that before in the Navy. When we were out at sea, it was faster to send it via helicopter than to send it out over the satellite data communications pathway that we had.
Right.
Yep.
Well,
that was
here's an
Ripple's.
interesting thought
That was
experiment.
Ripple's whole claim to fame. That was like literally what their whole campaign was. I could put a bunch of money in a briefcase, buy a plane ticket, get on a plane, fly over there, and then bring it to take a cab or rent a car and drive it to someone. And that's faster than using the banking system. And putting it in that context was like, whoa.
Oh, yeah. You think it'd be possible to encode useful information into the way that tires wear out? Like you could pack more information into the station wagon if every time you drove over the rumble strip, it sent some kind of message in, something like, I cannot think of the taps and dashes language now.
Morse.
Yes. If you could make tires send Morse code, then there's more information you can load into your station wagon right there.
Yep.
It's
Okay.
amazing.
All right.
Go to the next one. That was my favorite question. So just so you know, y'all.
Those are really good.
Well, it was right at the top. It was a lot of people's
I'm
favorite.
gonna
question.
vote that up like crazy after this is over. All right, Jegs, what crypto payment method, in your opinion, is good for marketplaces?
Whichever one is easiest for you to use with a trading partner at a given time, right? Whichever one happens to be right there.
It is a weird, I will tell you, it is a potentially a very interesting question, because you think about it, it's like, if I'm going to go buy eggs and milk, I have a medium of exchange that's defined by the government that that they have to accept. I think that's how, I don't know, legally, whatever.
Yep,
but
that is
I can give them
legal
dollars.
tender law.
I apparently can't give them gold. But theoretically, I could. Like if I went to a farmer, I could give them gold. I
Right.
think.
Technically, you could offer a jaunty tune, and if they'll accept it, it's a fair
Right.
trade.
But the weird thing is, with the advent of cryptocurrency, there are a tremendous number of possible. I could give you Doge, I could give you Bitcoin, maybe fees of fit or not. Maybe I can't give you Ethereum because of the fees, but I could give you hundreds or thousands of other tokens with market value, and yet it all whittles down to still which ones will they accept and which do I have, that type of thing. But we have tons of mediums of exchange now. So
I think also bringing that to the last question, what I said before is that there's been marketplaces throughout history, since the beginning of history, and they've been very specialized and localized. And with crypto, blockchain, and the internet, it really brings everything together to where there could be that guy that likes a jaunty tune, and the only way to get him to get his goods was to go to him and give him a jaunty tune. Whereas you can create an NFT of you singing that or doing the jig, and you can send that to a guy across the world, and then he can send you that good or that whatever you wanted to get, where that was never possible before. So it's not just creating new marketplaces, but with crypto and with NFTs, it's creating so many different ways to pay for it. And I think once again, it's the specialty of that market. If you want to buy illegal goods, obviously you would use like Monero or some kind of privacy coin reader.
But it does depend on the market, right?
It depends on the marketplace.
What kind of marketplace it is.
Crypto is good for it, yeah. But that's the thing. You can now customize the money to go along with a customized marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you can create secondary markets. Like if you created the Jaunty Tune NFT and somebody accepted that as payment and then put it on display, that person could say, on the full faith and credit of whatever person can make a meaningful claim against this NFT, you can count on this NFT being transferred in some percentage of ownership to you. If you prefer that instead of this currency, and then you could have a Jaunty Tune NFT backed fungible token you could issue, and someone else could say, okay, but what if you don't pay that debt, and we're going to go ahead and create a token that represents that risk, and I'm going to use this in the marketplace. You can trade, the risk that I won't pay tokens in Jaunty Tune tokens, and have an entire economy based on the relative value proposition of, you keeping your word about what you'll do with a Jaunty Tune if somebody demands it of you. It's freaking, it's kind of a brain teaser, but that idea sounds better or more cognizable in my head.
That happens a lot to me too. I totally understand. But with marketplaces, and kind of piggybacking off of something that was in chat, but JP said something about Tesla adopting Bitcoin versus Tesla introducing Tesla coin. Like which one's a better idea? In my case, we actually did go round and round for a long time about how to do something with a very hyper local marketplace that we're building, and we got so far. We even got to the point where we were just assuming that we were going to launch our own token, our own coin, right? Kind of a local coin. And when it came down to it, we ended up looking at Den and saying, look, man, honestly, there's a lot of things we could do, and there's a lot of custom things we could build, but we've got a token right here, right? And this can be our community token, and it can be everyone's community token. It can be, and it's ready to go. So the reason we decided to just use Matter instead of making our own token locally is really because of bandwidth and efficiencies. Like there's a team building an entire ecosystem and infrastructure for this already, and kind of the red carpet's rolled out saying, hey, whoever wants to build on top of what we're building, we're giving you the tools for it. Let us know what you need. And so we were like, you know what, as a business to business situation, we can take that so easily. There's already an app in the App Store. There's already tokens and distribution. There's already a schedule. There's already a community. And we can say, okay, cool. Let's start putting on local events like we're used to doing anyway. And we'll just adopt this that already exists instead of spinning our own. And I think that's what Tesla should do. They should just do Lightning nodes in every single Tesla car should be a node. And then, boom, payments network, you're done. And you're supporting and the other side too is like, as a business, we're just going to invest in a token that we happen to hold because we've been, dealing with DIN for a while. So that gives us an incentive to support the token economy, and it gives people an incentive to use it. And then we can just give away ownership that already exists, in the form of lot as people attend our events, and then go from there. So it's like just using what's already being built is often just the right choice.
I love that idea, and I would say there's an and there. Like it should be pluggable, right? Like if somebody else has a bright idea like that about how they want their their store of value marketplace token to work, like they should be able to plug in their own their own code according to a protocol. Like that's really a lot of the power of blockchains. When you put it generally, is like you can come up with something that conforms with the protocol without asking permission first.
Yes,
that's the other thing. Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I would love to
ask Joe, did I ever ask to start like developing and building and using Dragonchain, or did I just ape my way in and say, hey, I'm here, guys, and it's open source, so I'm just going to do it. Hi.
Exactly.
It's amazing stuff. That's why all of our level on Dragonchain, all of our level 5 nodes have always been without any permission. We added Neo. They didn't even know that we were using them. They were surprised. We were surprised that they had as few nodes as they did. We were surprised that they didn't have a real release system, and I don't say anything negative. I'm sure it's improved, but we didn't need any permission. We just started plugging into Bitcoin, Ethereum. Disney used Bitcoin. There was no announcement. There was no need to strike a deal with the CEO of Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. We just started up a node and we started plugging things into it. So it's pretty cool.
What I really want from Tesla is for them to make a back-end protocol plugin port for their regenerative braking, so that I can cause it to mine whatever from the regenerative braking only when it's active.
Yeah, I think they'll do stuff like it on Mars. The U.S. states don't let them do enough things, right? The fact that they can do things with the technology, but none of us can agree to. It's like I just want to turn on the total autopilot. It's like, well, where you live, and by the way, they should be using blockchain, and they should have a Dragonchain node in every car because it could be a black box. Which you think about it, on the one hand, they could do all the debugging and testing. They could see.
Well, they have their own insurance too, right? They should.
Yeah, and second, exactly, for insurance, and then the second side for the user, for the driver, that when you get pulled over, you could actually pull. It's like, nope, I wasn't speeding. Look, here's the actual data, and I can prove it far better than you can prove that you saw what you saw on that device, right?
Oh, so, and all I have to do is put this on Witness Coin Marketplace. And let it get bid up just a little bit under the price of this ticket, and I can pay less than this penalty to have overwhelming evidence even against your word, officer, in court. So you should probably let this go.
Oh man, what if you mint your speeding ticket as an NFT on a marketplace to pay for the ticket?
Right.
That's interesting. For ticket collectors, I don't know.
There's a limit to the value of what you could get out of that, I guess, right?
Well, people collect interesting things,
Yeah.
Yep. Or Good Samaritans, like maybe they can take all the parking tickets all the hypothetical parking tickets that will be issued in some area and pay them all, basically, by creating a marketplace.
That was a good question. Okay.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
Can we do the privacy one?
Yeah. So, wait, it's
is it
12x retailers utilizing?
I'm skipping. I'm sorry.
Existing blockchain versus retailers developing their own blockchain. I have some specific on this, right? So, what do you guys think?
Oh, that is who was asking in chat actually about the Tesla coin versus Bitcoin thing. Yep. So we already started talking about it. Sweet.
Yeah. So I mean, this one. I mean, my thought is, a lot of times, even the way we spoke about methods of payment that. Tokens created for a specific use or sometimes hit the niche better, whatever that need is. So with if they understand what they want to get, oftentimes it would be better to create their own token. If they are doing it simply for payments, they shouldn't touch that, right? If they're just wanting payments, they should use one of the multitude of payment currencies out there already. And maybe, and frankly, I would think they should allow all of them. It's, there are enough tools out there that you can do some good things by accepting, well, we'll accept all of these. And, but the interesting thing, at least for me, is that a lot of times it shouldn't just be about payments. They should be thinking about, liability, how can we track different things? How can we reward good customers, right? How can we make good customers loyal? How can we prove our loyalty to good customers? That type of thing.
Which customers do we want versus which ones do we want to alienate by the ones we serve?
Yes.
Like so much of that's a choice.
Right. Yep. And it's all measurable, and it's a neat thing because once you build that, you can plug it into a payment currency and other currencies that are specialized to maybe meet some specific need that a currency doesn't even exist today. You could plug in, but in the meantime, you can be tracking everything and then realize, and that the biggest thing is that you don't know going in what the real data looks like. That it's, you can set up a system and collect everything you can, and then keep adding stuff to it, but in time, you will realize, oh, we didn't realize the customers were doing this. If they just did this one step different, they would be much happier. And, now you can figure that out. You can reward that one extra step. You can do whatever you want to do.
Right.
But it's useful.
Or we have to, or sometimes we find out that the way that we think it would be the most useful is not the way that that it's actually useful to people. Like,
right.
Markets are to a certain degree a measurement of learning to interact with others, right? Like, you get a signal from it if you're selling in a marketplace or buying in a marketplace, and you learn something about how your peers, how your community, how the people contemplating joining your community are seeing you and seeing what value they can have from being there. And to a certain degree, we're all sort of fumbling around for the next best example of a thing that we can just do a little better from. And I think a blockchain that can facilitate that is something that any business should consider. I would say far be it from me to know which one is best for which business. Part to me, I think one of the smartest things anyone ever said about economics was it's the economist's job to point out to people who think they can predict and know anything about the world and make meaningful rules. Is making a mistake because they think they know something that they really have no business claiming to know.
And something else, just real quick, that's important to me is just, an existing blockchain has got an existing, theoretically, it has an existing community that are doing something completely different than what you're doing. So if you roll your own, is it just used by you? And if it is, does that make it inherently less reputable and less trustworthy? To me, I kind of like something that's just like has a wider community than just a custom. Like I can do a private blockchain which doesn't have the stuff that I want, which is like outside measurement. People that don't agree with me saying, yeah, you're right.
Right. Well, I mean, open source anything is going to be an easier way to go about things. Like if you're a business and your business is like, I make the best damn wool socks you've ever put on your feet, that you can't feel the seams because they aren't there. I figured out a way to do them seamlessly.
And
seamless sock supply chain.
The negative side of it is, and the thing that is very important to understand is, let's say I see this world computer. It happens to be Ethereum, right? It's like, and it is an amazing thing. I could program this, and it can run on all these unknown devices, basically without me needing to install it on those devices, right? That's the point of it.
Right.
So I run this, and let's say it's something I really need in my business, and something that it is valuable to have it decentralized in that way, whatever that might be. The issue with using something does tend to run up against the architecture and how certain things are built on it, because if I would have built something on Ethereum back in the day, and I'm thinking, okay, everything is clean, every time I send a transaction in, it gets in the block. It doesn't cost me a tremendous amount. The fees are reasonable for what I'm doing. And then something happens where with CryptoKitties or with something that is totally unattached and unpredictable from my business's context, and now it's unworkable. And so you have to consider that's the one
Right.
drawback to, and it's not about it being an open source, because that doesn't affect this. It is literally that it is
Unanticipated thing.
Well,
and it's a weird thing, but it's a
it's worse
centralized
if it's not
network.
open
It
source.
is.
You can't
It
even
is
come back from that if it's not open.
Yeah, we're competing over a centralized. It's a decentralized consensus, but the chain itself is singular. There is only one chain, so you're competing against everyone else to get in that chain. And we won't get into it, but the Bitcoin block size debates hit upon that issue. Ethereum has hit upon that issue with all the various fee issues and
Right.
congestion issues. So it's a really weird thing.
Well, and practically speaking, I would say, definitely as a business, you should probably try to use an existing solution that unless your business is creating those kinds of solutions, you should probably try an existing solution first. And pay really careful attention to your pain points, because if there's nothing out there better and you can get the expertise to make your own, then maybe what you learn from trying something that's too painful is how to make the thing better.
It's just like using GPS to get somewhere. I mean, it doesn't matter really how fast your car is if that road is full of traffic.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
going to slow down. And if you can see that there's a toll road or something else that's much faster, then you can use that. And if you have the means, you build your own road, and that's that. I guess that's the difference between centralized blockchains and decentralized blockchains.
And I just want to go back to Joe's point about open source too, because yes, it doesn't ultimately matter in terms of how the marketplace works for you in the context of other participants, right? But it does if something goes wrong, like having open source be a thing that you decide to pursue is really smart, because if you're using a bespoke thing that nobody else can access the source code for except for the company that sold it to you, and that company goes out of business, the same day you have a critical error with that software, you can't get a hold of anybody who knows how to fix it for you. The beauty of open source stuff is that if I go out, with Rivet, if we go out of business and all the people using us are suddenly faced with a world where they have to access all this infrastructure that they built dependencies on our capabilities for, since we open source everything, okay, go learn to run the open source project. You'll probably find us not super busy if we went out of business. So we'll be very easy to find and ask for help, but there will be other people who can.
Can I tell you something else that we've noticed about blockchain adoption? I would assert, I'm pretty confident that blockchain adoption generally has been crippled at a lot of places, because a lot of these companies roll their own, and they will hire a quote unquote blockchain expert, and they'll come in and they'll build the thing that, frankly, someone on the board or CEO, someone from the top that says, okay, we need to do blockchain. So they'll come in and they'll get a blockchain expert who builds a thing that is common across everywhere else, that everybody else is already doing it. Right these days, it's NFTs. In the past, it was something else, and they're not successful. And they're not successful for various reasons, but it's usually because they hire someone and then trust them to do these things that they probably shouldn't be doing. It's just an assumption, and it's like, whoa, you say blockchain, I'm going to assume that you want this, and it's really interesting, because whenever we see that, we usually have trouble getting any type of commitment, because they don't really know what they want. Like say if it's a bank, even though in my opinion a bank should be tracking things, preventing fraud, helping their customers with various ways to reduce costs, things like this. But most of them are looking at, we need to tokenize this asset, and it makes sense. But if you're holding an asset for someone, you don't. It's not going to be a tradable thing. There's a whole bunch of things like that. They're like, have always confused me. But Again, that's
Speaking of banks that suck, by the way, N26. Don't use that.
Never heard of
Don't
it.
use it. It's freaking terrible what they do when they flag you with their automatic risk examiner. I have a long story that I won't go into too much detail on, but I can tell you that if you search Reddit for N26 and blocks and either cryptocurrency or vapes, you will find accurate, true stories. Because what's mind blowing about it is these custodians think that they have a right to tell you what you can buy and what you can't, and they can create contracts that are perfectly legal, that they can deprive you of access to all of your funds because they disagree with how you decided to try to spend a fraction of them. I was doing a field test on them, and luckily, being in crypto, you sort of learn to not put all your eggs in one basket. I was lucky to be not having all my eggs in that basket, but there are people out there who got really screwed over by those guys. PSA, run far and fast. They are dangerous in how they pursue the policy of protecting you from risk. They protect you from risk by potentially taking your whole livelihood from you automatically with no appeal.
Yep. Yeah, it's great. Banks. We should have an episode entirely on banks. Okay, next. Let's see here. Is it okay? Foost. How can companies gain privacy when accepting crypto directly for goods and services? I'm not sure if I read it correctly because I could read it differently. Do they mean privacy for the individual or for the company? It has to be for the individual.
I assume it's for the company. It could be both. I would say two reasons that I can think of right now, two completely different ways. Methods would be one, obviously, use a privacy coin, use Monero, use Zcash, use Oxen, use something, there's a couple of good forks from Monero, there's a couple of shitty ones too, but do some research on privacy coins. That's a way. Another way, which I didn't even really think of until this year sometime, which is what I'm doing, which is a local venue where we just have a business-to-business relationship where we say we're going to be doing events on these days. During these events, you're going to accept our cryptocurrency at your venue for admission, for the bar, for merch, for whatever. We'll give you a price list in advance. We'll give you QR codes. We'll make sure that our users fully know how to do that, and your bartender's not sitting there teaching somebody how to use an app. At the end of the night, we have a bar tab. It's just simple as it's like any other bar tab you have with any other customer, and then you have a bar tab for our business. You give us all the tokens that our community is giving you for paying for stuff, and we pay our bar tab. They do that for SNAP benefits. They do that for food stamps at the market, and now they can do that with us, where we just handle it as a business instead of even exposing them to crypto at all. You know what I mean? That way, we honor whatever price they accepted. Screw Uniswap, screw market price. Come up with a price that day. That's the price, and then the business doesn't incur any capital gains. They give it back to us at the same value for however they sold it, and then that's it. They just had a customer, and it was all USD cash. I would say get a partner, I guess, is the other way to do it. Yep. That I know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really cool solution. I didn't know the details of it until all the details of it tells us now, but it's super neat. Yep. I love it.
Really clean, easy. Yeah.
And this is going to start to sound like a pitch for the things we're building, but Rivet is a way that people building on chains we support, and we're going to be supporting a lot more chains really, really soon with Cardinal. It's going to be if you think about how building with the building blocks of blockchains, right? The calls you can make to the chain in terms of its opcodes and all those things, it's difficult to do. And that's why having a single type of interface that can support multiple chains is really hard. Well, in that, things get expensive, and privacy is one of those things that can go by the wayside very fast, right? So when you pick infrastructure, if you're not saying I'm hosting it myself and I'm going to run it on a Tor node and I'm going to go through all the places where information about what my users are doing can leak out. And I'm going to make sure that shit can't get out. And I'm going to make sure that I've thought about it from a legal perspective and a social pressure perspective. Like, if Parler had thought about it from a social perspective, they would never have been able to get deplatformed by AWS because nobody would have known where their infrastructure was hosted. But they didn't think to hide that.
It's funny to say that a social network didn't think of the social implications.
Right. So
Okay.
with Rivet, we give you hard privacy protections, and you should expect that from all of your infrastructure providers that are not you. So make sure that you look very closely at that, because that is one place where privacy is a blind spot for a lot of people.
Yeah,
we're going to be talking a lot more about it at our company pretty
pick
soon.
a partner like you're picking a VPN, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And by the way, I do think a use case was almost there to really drive privacy currencies, which was the $600 bank reporting stuff that apparently is not going to pass. I don't know.
I mean,
that
just
would
no,
have
it's
been
so
a
bad.
huge driver.
That's so dangerous.
The
People
best
should
thing
be up in
about
arms about that.
Yeah, the best thing about Apple saying that they were going to intrusively look at all your photos was people started looking at other options.
Right.
That kind of thing.
But yeah. Yep.
So yeah.
Okay. It's 56 minutes, so let's go the round. What's going on, Dave?
Oh man, yeah. So probably next week, Joe, is that right? Matter tipping should be able to be played with. We're what we're doing with Den Social is I've been kind of like stomping on the brakes for a while until matter tipping and until governance comes out, like local governance. That's the next two things. So matter tipping is coming out next week. We are doing, here's what I'll say. We're going to start doing a monthly, super high quality improvised concert with paid, very talented musicians. Every month, we're going to stream it on Den Social. We'll advertise it ahead of time, and we'll be able to flex the tipping feature. And so the tips will be split up to the artists evenly, which means they'll have to get some Den accounts, and we'll get some cool new talented users in the music layer, things like that. So we're ramping up Den Social. Go get the app.
Yes.
Cool. You should consider to either put QR codes for each individual band, or have them comment below so that you can say, "Oh, I like that band. I'm gonna."
We should have like a messaging meeting. It's going to be like sometime in November next month, so we should chat about that separately.
Yeah, that's cool
For sure.
Sean, what's going on?
Just finished a big contest. We had a big giveaway.
Cool.
Me and some the YouTubers and like 13 other projects. Just the usual stuff, man. Go follow me on Twitter and my YouTube channel.
Yes.
I thought it was pretty interesting.
Who won?
That Trump came out with a social network this week.
I saw that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
thought that was kind of a big thing. And the name was cool. It was like Freedom or Truth or something. Yeah,
I can't remember because there was they announced the company and the platform, right?
Yeah, there's like he partnered with some like major media thing, but I think we're going to move towards that. Instead of having an Amazon, I think we're going to have, a bunch of like Pets.com. We're going to have more specific social networks, and the amount of power that and the amount of I'm not even going to give it. I'm not going to give it the credit. The amount of power that evildoers, the whole cancel culture can do because of the power of like Twitter or Facebook. It's just gotten out of hand. So I think if they have less powers, less people in a concentrated space, less of a broad space, that's going to be good. Yeah.
The future of innovation on this front is in building tools that let people deploy their own. Like, if the flip answer you're going to get from being deplatformed is go build your own, then we should see innovators building tools that let you do that with the click of a button. Okay, sure, I'll deploy a micro Facebook over here for myself. Thanks.
That's what Den is, right? That's totally that's total purpose,
it's like a. I mean, I don't want to. It's really terrible because I sound like I'm saying segregation is good, but creating bubbles where you can feel, safe or just relax. You're not super stressed out. The thing, there was Saturday Night Live did a skit, which they're not really funny anymore. But it was about the email scandal that the
I've
coach
got
had.
high hopes in the new season, though.
Yeah, well, the coach came out. He's like, yeah, the NFL commissioner. Those emails were terrible. So we're firing him, and this is the new head coach. And he came out and was like, I'm the new head coach. I'm really happy to be here. They just looked at my email, so I'm going to go ahead and have to quit now. And then they kept going until this guy was like, I'm the janitor. I was just cleaning up, and someone just grabbed me and said, you're the coach now? So, okay, I'm the coach. But it's like everyone, if they go back 10 years in their emails, they're going to find something.
I think that's how
Right.
Biden got in, actually. Anyway,
So getting picked for the head chair is also getting, a notice that you're next on deck to win Russian roulette.
I'm just looking forward to when we have presidential elections and like political elections, and people's old like MySpace, stupid ass MySpace posts are going to start showing up, or their live journals, or things like that. Like before anybody ever started thinking about the permanency of this.
I think it ramps up to the point where it's ineffective. The
Exactly.
cancel culture is inflating,
Yeah,
just like a currency,
So,
where it doesn't matter after a while, and that's the beauty in the end,
Right.
when people don't apologize, because that's the whole point.
Right.
If you get canceled,
Also,
can't
it doesn't matter once you're I think at a certain level. I mean, Trudeau was in blackface. And nothing.
right. And I know, like,
that's a
Once you
different
reach that
issue.
level, it doesn't matter.
we're
That-
short for
that
time.
is if you are a leftist or a Clinton, or if you say the right words when you are attacked, you're let off entirely. It
Right.
depends on, and it's the weirdest thing in the world. It depends on
Well,
what race you are, what religion you are, what your political beliefs are. That's what the Justice Department is entirely looking at. They don't care
Well, I
about
specifically
the-
look
Right.
forward to a time when people can say, "Yep, that was stupid, and you shouldn't have said that, and you're an idiot." But let's go have a beer,
Right.
like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Man, you were a dumb kid.
This is what I would say about it, right? Like the spirit behind the people who really want to make the world a better place was exploited by the people who used cancel culture as an expedient way to not have to do anything meaningful to solve real problems, right? Oh, we do agree that it's fucking insane that police can pull you over and just based on their vibe about you, search your car, and then if you argue with them at all, they can shoot you in the face. And if you sue them for shooting your dog because they just fucking felt like it, unless you can find an exactly matching precedent, then they can't be sued for violating your constitutional rights. Well, guess what? Cancel culture made it possible for them to do something about it without doing something about it. And that's the real shit of it, is like, it's been co-opted by people who would rather make it look like they're doing something about the problem than do something about problems. And I think that's
a conversation all in itself. Because I started seeing that in government. And I was
Greg
still
updates, and then if we do lightning round, we have to do it quick. But
Great update.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
we got to speak.
Plugeth.org. Go
but
there.
okay.
Plugeth.org. Go there. We just launched it. You can build now, instead of forks of Geth, you can build plugins that work with the Go plugin system. And our fork of Geth will install and load them, and you can actually do stuff that goes beyond the basic Geth functionality without creating a giant technical debt for yourself. It's open source. You can go check it out right now. The docs are live at, like I said, plugeth.org. Plugeth_org is us on Twitter. I made that winking GIF, by the way. So if you hate it, please feel free to flame me.
I'm going to go follow you right now.
But yeah, that's out there, and we really think that it's going to be powerful because it's going to let people do stuff with Geth and EVM compatible things based on Geth that they couldn't do without creating a maintenance problem for themselves for the indefinite future.
Yep. Very good. Okay, so our dictator tells me no lightning round. We don't have time. I have a meeting to get to, so it's all right. So for me, basically a couple of things. Go build something on Dragonchain. Go build something. Build a community on Den. Do the things. Talk to Dave. Figure out how to maybe work it in. That's what this entire show is based on, and it's an experiment. So that is building a community from scratch using those tools. So
Yeah,
cool.
plug real quick while we're vocal and not writing words on the internet. Dave at den.social. Hit me up if you want to start talking about how to get your community to do what we're doing locally.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks everybody for joining. This was great. I'm going to tell everybody, join the WBRT, the World Blockchain Roundtable Layer in Den, to ask questions for next week, to vote up the questions that you want to hear answered or the topics spoken about. And go back, you make sure you share this one. Everybody here gets a lot based upon views, so do share this, try to get people to watch it. And let's see here. I think that's it. Like, comment, subscribe. Anything else? I think it's good. Sorry, no lightning round this week. Stick around, guys. That's it. Thanks. Bye.
The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of a never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now there are many. Because soon there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?